think of this, Romans 8:28, where it's 8:28 through 30. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he predestined, he also called. Those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. We love that passage as believers, but I don't think sometimes that's not the very first thing you want to say to somebody that's grieving, right?
That's right.
That's not always the very first thing they want to hear. Roman, because I mean, even though we know it's true, sometimes it's just a matter of you just got to weep with those who are weeping, right? You have any thoughts on some of those things that I'm sharing?
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, I think timing is everything, and that's what you're saying. And I think in biblical counseling, in the biblical counseling world, a lot of people view us, biblical counselors, as just truth tellers, just very harsh and direct, and that's the truth, and suck it up, buttercup, kind of counseling. And
Right.
I don't know any biblical counselor who does that. I mean, the people that I know are very gracious, they're very kind, they weep with those who weep, and they cling and hold on to truth. We don't compromise that at all, but there's just a way to say it. And I think it's a difference really between public proclamation, like preaching of the word, versus the personal ministry where you get to be a little more tender and those things. And so, yeah, there's a lot of sorrow in this world, but boy, we have a lot of hope as believers. Like you said about Ryan and Abby, had they been just a few years earlier when they really weren't, born again,
Grounded.
walking with the Lord, grounded, wherever they were spiritually, they weren't in a good place. I don't know how you survive something like that. I've been fortunate not to have any children die, and I know that's God's grace. And we've had some near death experiences with all four of our kids, actually, but we haven't experienced that grief firsthand. And I just don't know even today how I could do it without the Lord.
Right. Yeah. Me either. That's just it. And I watched them, and I won't go into the detail, but there was a point at Aria, that was their little girl's name, at their funeral, where Ryan actually stepped up and to the microphone. And I thought that was just bold in of itself. But one of the first things he said is that we know, and we are holding on to the fact that even in the midst of this, God is good. God is good. And then he just laid out some things and talking about his, sovereignty over everything. But yet you could see that he was saying it through tears and through pain, but he was clinging to, the God's promises. And that just makes me think of Psalm 119:50 that says, "This is my comfort in my affliction, that your promise gives me life." So I love that verse so much, because it's not that our afflictions are comfortable in this life. The things that come our way, especially when it comes to death and grieving and working through that stuff, it's not comfortable. But what does bring us comfort is that God's promise gives us life, and that we know we can trust that he's good, and we can trust that his eternal plan, we just don't have the full scope of that and don't understand. And there's just some things we're never going to understand on this side of heaven, and hopefully that's the case. It's this side of heaven, because if we're only living for this life, and thinking this is the best we're going to get, and we're going to, and we're not right with Jesus, then what awaits us on the other side is so much worse than even our hardest day in this life.